Politeness is something we're taught from the time we can barely walk. Be nice. Say please and thank you. Don't interrupt. Smile. And for the most part, these rules work until they don't. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Being polite will not save you when your safety, dignity, or integrity is on the line. Politeness will not shield you from people who want to take advantage of you. It will not stop someone from walking all over you. And it certainly will not earn you the respect of those who see you as weak. I'm not saying you should be rude. This isn't about abandoning kindness, but it's about understanding that kindness without boundaries is an open invitation for disrespect. Too often, we confuse politeness with weakness. We let our fear of coming across the wrong way stop us from speaking up, from setting limits, from saying no when it matters most. Think about it. How many times have you stayed quiet because you didn't want to make things awkward? How many times have you agreed to something you didn't want to do because you didn't want to hurt someone's feelings? And then later, you were the one who ended up hurt, frustrated, and disrespected. The world is not kind to those who refuse to defend themselves. The world doesn't reward silence. And the truth is, predators, whether they're in the boardroom, on the street, or even in your personal life, can smell passivity. They can see hesitation. They notice when you care more about being liked than being respected. Strength isn't about being aggressive. It's about being unshakable in your self-worth. It's about having the courage to stand your ground even when your voice shakes. It's about understanding that your safety and self-respect are not up for negotiation. When you walk into a room, don't shrink to make others comfortable. Stand tall. Make eye contact. Speak with intention. Your tone doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be steady. And when something doesn't sit right with you, you don't need to explain it away with 10 sentences. No is a complete sentence. Politeness teaches you to avoid conflict at all costs. Strength teaches you that some conflict is necessary. There will be moments when you have to confront, when you have to say something that might not be received well, when you have to put your foot down. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. And here's the thing, when you stop leading with politeness and start leading with strength, the right people will respect you more, not less. They will know where you stand. They will know that your boundaries are firm. And the ones who don't like it, they're the ones who benefited from your silence before. Kindness is a beautiful quality, but when it exists without boundaries, it becomes a liability. Most of us were raised to believe that kindness means accommodating others, saying yes when we'd rather say no, and avoiding anything that might make someone uncomfortable. We think it's noble to always put others first, to keep the peace, to never offend. But what happens when that same kindness becomes the very reason people take advantage of you? That's the danger. When kindness is stripped of boundaries, it turns into self-sacrifice, and not the kind that makes you stronger. The kind that leaves you depleted, unprotected, and vulnerable. The truth is, people learn how to treat you by what you allow. If you consistently put other people's comfort above your own well-being, they will come to expect it. And while you may believe you're doing the right thing by being the bigger person, in reality, you're teaching others that your needs don't matter as much as theirs. It doesn't take long for that dynamic to spiral. The small compromises you make to avoid conflict turn into bigger ones, until you find yourself in situations where your own values and safety are on the line. Boundaries are not a luxury, they are a necessity. Think of them as the invisible fence that protects your energy, your time, and your mental well-being. Without them, people will wander into your space and take whatever they can, whether they mean to or not. The mistake so many of us make is assuming that everyone has good intentions, that people will respect unspoken rules, that they'll simply know when they're crossing a line. But here's the reality. If you don't clearly communicate and enforce your limits, you can't expect anyone to respect them. Some people push boundaries intentionally, testing to see what they can get away with. Others do it unintentionally, not out of malice, but because you've trained them, through your silence, through your over-accommodation. to believe it's okay. Either way, the result is the same. You lose control of your own space, your own time, your own sense of self. That's why boundaries have to be clearly defined and consistently enforced. Many people fear setting boundaries because they think it will make them seem rude or unkind. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors. They don't shut people out. They simply make sure the right people enter and stay. The people who respect you will appreciate your boundaries. They may even trust you more because they know where you stand. The people who push back, who get offended or angry when you draw a line, are often the ones who were benefiting from your lack of boundaries in the first place. There's also a deeper reason kindness without boundaries is dangerous. It creates resentment. When you constantly say yes out of obligation, when you silence yourself to keep the peace, when you let people take without giving in return, you may feel like you're being generous in the moment. But over time, that generosity turns into bitterness. You start to feel unappreciated, invisible, and used. And here's the problem. It's not the other person's fault entirely, because you were the one who never spoke up. You were the one who allowed it to happen. Protecting your boundaries is ultimately about self-respect. When you respect yourself enough to say, this is okay, and this is not okay, you teach others to do the same. You stop seeing boundaries as selfish and start seeing them as an act of self-care. Imagine someone asking to borrow your car. Would you let them take it without gas in the tank, without a license, without any understanding of how to handle it? Of course not. You'd have conditions. You'd make sure they were responsible. So why would you treat your time, energy, and emotional well-being with less care than you treat your car? It's also important to understand that kindness without boundaries isn't truly kindness. It's often fear. Fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of not being liked. But fear-based kindness isn't generosity, it's self-preservation disguised as giving. Real kindness comes from a place of strength, where you have enough respect for yourself to say yes when you want to and no when you need to. It's a choice, not an obligation. The moment you start putting boundaries around your kindness, you'll notice a shift. You'll no longer feel drained after interactions. You'll stop replaying conversations in your head, wishing you'd spoken up. You'll begin to trust yourself more, because you know you can rely on yourself to protect your own well-being. And perhaps most importantly, you'll start attracting people who value you for who you are, not for what they can get from you. There's nothing wrong with being a kind person, but kindness without boundaries is like a house without a lock. Anyone can walk in, and not everyone who enters has good intentions. You can be warm, compassionate, and generous, but you also need to be clear, firm, and protective of yourself. Boundaries don't make you less kind. They make your kindness sustainable. They ensure that when you give, it comes from a place of choice, not pressure. Kindness paired with strength is one of the most powerful forces you can embody. It says, I care about others, but I care about myself too. It allows you to serve, to support, to love, without losing yourself in the process. And in a world where so many people mistake politeness for weakness, your ability to set boundaries becomes not only a form of self-protection, but a statement that you are not someone to be taken lightly. Avoiding conflict might feel safe in the moment, but it's one of the fastest ways to leave yourself unprotected. We grow up hearing phrases like, don't rock the boat, keep your head down, pick your battles. The problem is that many people interpret these as a mandate to never speak up, to swallow every uncomfortable truth, and to let things slide no matter how wrong they feel. Over time, this habit doesn't just keep you quiet. It erodes your confidence, your sense of agency, and your ability to stand up for yourself when it matters most. When you avoid conflict at all costs, you are essentially telling the world that you value comfort over truth, that you'd rather maintain appearances than address problems. And while you might think this makes life easier, it often makes it far more difficult in the long run. The small issues you ignore don't go away, they grow. They pile up until they become unmanageable. The person who interrupted you once will keep interrupting. The colleague who took credit for your work will do it again. The friend who repeatedly cancels plans will continue to disrespect your time. Speaking up is not aggression. It's clarity. It's drawing a line that says, I see what's happening and I'm not okay with it. Too often, we equate confrontation with hostility, but confrontation, when done with respect and control, is simply communication. It's telling the other person where you stand so they know how to engage with you moving forward. If you never do this, you allow misunderstandings and disrespect to take root. Predators, whether they're manipulative bosses, controlling partners, or even strangers who sense vulnerability, look for people who avoid conflict. Why? Because avoidance signals fear. It signals that you will not challenge them, that you'll tolerate their behavior to keep things peaceful. This is why silence protects no one. It's a false safety. You might think you're avoiding danger by staying quiet, but you could be making yourself a target. This doesn't mean you have to meet every slight with a full-scale confrontation. Strength is about discernment, knowing when to speak, and how to do it in a way that protects your dignity. Sometimes a simple, calm statement is enough to address a problem. Other times, you may need to stand your ground more firmly. The point is, you have to be willing to step into that discomfort when necessary. Avoiding conflict also robs you of an opportunity to be truly understood. People cannot read your mind. If you don't tell them something is bothering you, they might assume everything is fine. This can breed resentment, not only toward them, but toward yourself. You'll find yourself replaying moments in your head, thinking of all the things you should have said but didn't. That unspoken frustration builds up, and eventually, it explodes, often in ways that are more destructive than if you had addressed the issue earlier. It's important to reframe how you think about conflict. Conflict isn't always negative. In fact, when handled well, it can strengthen relationships, clarify expectations, and deepen mutual respect. The healthiest relationships, personal or professional, are the ones where people can be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. They can disagree, debate, and still value each other afterward, but that only happens when both parties are willing to have those hard conversations. Many people fear conflict because they're afraid of losing approval. They don't want to be seen as difficult, dramatic, or high maintenance. But here's the reality. The people who truly respect you will not see your assertiveness as a flaw. They'll see it as integrity. The ones who do get offended or angry are often the ones who benefited from your silence in the past. Losing their approval isn't a loss. It's clarity. When you speak up, you also strengthen your own self-trust. Every time you defend your boundaries, you send yourself a message. I have my own back. This builds confidence that carries into every area of your life. It changes the way you walk into a room, the way you negotiate, the way you handle challenges. People pick up on that, and just as predators can sense fear, they can also sense strength. The first few times you step into conflict, it might feel terrifying. Your heart might race. Your hands might shake. That's normal. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means you act in spite of it. The more you practice speaking up, the less power fear has over you. You start to realize that most confrontations aren't as catastrophic as you imagined. In fact, many people will back down or change their behavior once they realize you're willing to address it directly. There's also a ripple effect. When you speak up for yourself, you give others permission to do the same. You set a standard for how people should be treated, not just for you, but for anyone watching. This is especially important in environments where silence is the norm. Workplaces, families, communities where problems are swept under the rug. Your willingness to break that pattern can inspire others to step forward too. Avoiding conflict might keep you comfortable for a moment, but it will cost you your peace in the long run. And peace isn't the absence of disagreement. It's the presence of respect. That respect starts with you respecting yourself enough to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. You don't have to be loud, you don't have to be aggressive, but you do have to be willing to stand up when something isn't right. Silence might feel safe, but it's a fragile safety. one that can shatter the moment someone decides to push past your limits. Your voice, on the other hand, is a shield. It's the tool you use to define your space, to protect your dignity, to ensure you're not overlooked or overpowered. And that voice becomes stronger every time you choose to use it. Chasing respect and chasing approval are two very different things, yet too many people confuse them. Approval is about being liked, fitting in, and pleasing others. Respect is about being valued, trusted, and taken seriously. The problem is, when you prioritize being liked over being respected, you put yourself in a position where your worth depends on someone else's opinion. And opinions are fragile. They can change in a moment, and they often have more to do with the other person's mood or biases than with anything you've done. When your primary goal is to be liked, you start making decisions based on what will make others happy rather than on what is right for you. You bite your tongue when you disagree. You downplay your achievements so you don't intimidate anyone. You agree to things that go against your values because you don't want to seem difficult. And while all of this might earn you temporary approval, it will never earn you lasting respect. Respect is not given to those who constantly accommodate at their own expense. It's given to those who stand firm in their principles, who have the courage to be honest, even when it's not popular, who don't bend every time someone pushes. People might not always like you for it. In fact, some will resent it, but they will remember it. They will know where you stand, and even if they disagree, they will know they can't manipulate or intimidate you. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you can't have universal approval and self-respect at the same time. At some point, you will have to choose. If you choose approval, you'll have to live with the discomfort of compromising your values to keep people happy. If you choose respect, you'll have to live with the reality that some people will dislike you for it. And here's the key. The ones who dislike you for having boundaries and standards are not people you should be trying to win over. Being respected often means being willing to be misunderstood. It means people will make assumptions about you, that you're arrogant, cold, or unfriendly, simply because you refuse to be a pushover. But in the long run, it's better to be underestimated than to be disrespected. Approval seekers often find themselves exhausted because they're constantly performing for others, constantly trying to predict what will make everyone happy, constantly chasing an image of themselves that's acceptable to the crowd. It's a race with no finish line, and it will wear you down. Respect, on the other hand, frees you. When you stop worrying about being liked, you stop overthinking every move. You stop diluting your personality to fit the room. You start showing up as yourself, unapologetically, and that authenticity is what commands respect. People can sense when you're genuine. They can also sense when you're trying too hard to win them over, and ironically, desperation for approval often has the opposite effect, making people respect you less. You also have to understand that respect and likability aren't mutually exclusive. You can be both respected and liked, but the order matters. When you lead with the goal of being respected, the right people will also come to like you. Not because you cater to them, but because they admire your integrity. When you lead with the goal of being liked, you risk losing both. People who only like you for what you can do for them will vanish the moment you stop giving. People who respect you will stay even when you disagree. In many cases, earning respect means making choices that will disappoint others. You might have to say no to invitations, refuse unfair requests, or walk away from relationships or opportunities that no longer serve you. Approval seekers see these decisions as failures. They think they're letting people down. But those who value respect see them as necessary. They understand that protecting their time, energy, and values is not selfish. It's the foundation for any healthy interaction. One of the most liberating moments in life is realizing that someone's disapproval is not the end of the world. When you stop fearing rejection, you start making decisions based on your own compass instead of someone else's expectations. This doesn't mean you become reckless or intentionally antagonistic. It means you stop editing yourself to earn validation you don't actually need. It's also worth remembering that not everyone's respect is worth earning. Some people's version of respect is compliance. They only respect those who serve their needs. These are the very people who will withdraw approval the moment you assert yourself. Losing their favor is not a loss. It's a sign that you've broken free from their control. If you look at the most admired leaders, athletes, and trailblazers, you'll notice a pattern. They are not universally liked. In fact, many of them have critics who openly dislike them. But they are respected because they stand for something. They have convictions. They are not afraid to say no, to make hard decisions, to disappoint people in service of a bigger principle. Their respect doesn't come from charm. It comes from courage. When you choose respect over being liked, you inevitably filter your relationships. The people who remain in your circle are those who appreciate your honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. They are the ones who don't need you to shrink to make them feel bigger. And those relationships, grounded in mutual respect, are far more fulfilling than any surface-level approval you could ever get from trying to please everyone. Being liked is nice. It feels good in the moment, but it's fleeting. Respect, on the other hand, is earned over time and holds steady even when the emotional weather changes. You can't fake it. You can't shortcut it. You have to live it through consistency, integrity, and the courage to be yourself. That's why when you have to choose between the two, respect will always be the more powerful, more lasting, and more liberating choice. One of the simplest yet most powerful words you can use is no. It's direct, clear, and final. Yet for so many people, it's also one of the hardest words to say. We're conditioned to believe that saying no needs to be softened, justified, or accompanied by a long explanation so the other person doesn't feel bad. But the truth is, you don't owe anyone an elaborate defense for protecting your time, energy, or boundaries. No is a complete sentence. When you say no, you're not being rude, you're being honest. You're choosing authenticity over people-pleasing. You're telling the world that your commitments, your energy, and your values matter enough to protect. The problem comes when we attach guilt to the word. We imagine the other person's disappointment, we overthink how they might interpret our refusal, and we bend ourselves into uncomfortable shapes trying to soften the blow. But every extra justification we add sends the subtle message that our no is negotiable. That if they push back hard enough, they might be able to change it into a yes. This is where so many people get trapped. They say no, but then follow it with apologies or excuses that make the refusal sound weak. I'm so sorry, I can't, I'm just so busy, or I would love to, but maybe another time. While sometimes those phrases are fine in casual settings, in more important moments they can be dangerous because they leave the door open for the other person to try again. If you want your boundaries to be respected, your no needs to be firm, calm, and without unnecessary explanations. One reason people struggle to say no without explanation is fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of conflict, fear of not being liked. But the cost of that fear is steep. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're making a withdrawal from your own well-being. You're giving away time you needed for rest, energy you needed for your own goals, or resources you can't afford to spare. Over time, this habit doesn't just exhaust you, it erodes your sense of control over your own life. You start to feel like you exist to meet other people's needs, and your own priorities are always last on the list. Saying no without over-explaining is also a way of reclaiming self-trust. It's a declaration that you believe in your own judgment and don't need external approval to validate your decisions. It shows that you know what's best for you, and you're willing to stand by it even if it makes someone uncomfortable. The moment you stop needing to cushion your no with justifications, you step into a kind of quiet power. You no longer feel the urge to overcompensate for taking care of yourself. Of course, there's a balance. Delivering a no with respect and clarity is important. The way you say it can determine whether it lands as assertive or as unnecessarily aggressive. You don't have to raise your voice or use sharp language. Tone is everything. A calm, Steady tone paired with steady body language tells the other person that your decision is final, not up for debate, and not driven by hostility. You can be firm without being unkind. There's also a misconception that saying no damages relationships. In reality, the opposite is true. Healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, thrive when both parties feel safe to express their boundaries without fear of backlash. If someone withdraws from you simply because you said no, it's a sign that they were more interested in what you could give them than in respecting you as a person. The people worth keeping in your life are those who can handle hearing no without punishing you for it. It's also important to remember that every yes you give to someone else is, in a way, a no to yourself. Time and energy are finite resources. If you fill your days with commitments you didn't actually want to take on, you rob yourself of the chance to work on your own goals, rest when you need to, or simply live on your own terms. A well-placed no can be the very thing that creates space for the things you actually want in your life. Many people wait for the right moment to start saying no more freely, but the truth is, it's a skill that only gets easier with practice. The first few times you'll feel uncomfortable. You might feel the urge to explain yourself, to soften your words, to fill the silence. But every time you resist that urge, you strengthen your ability to hold your ground. Over time, saying no without guilt will feel as natural as saying yes when you truly want to. Another powerful aspect of no is a complete sentence is the psychological effect it has on how people perceive you. When you make quick, clear decisions and don't over-justify them, you come across as someone who knows their own mind. People are less likely to push your boundaries because they recognize you as someone who can't be easily swayed. In a world full of hesitation and over-explaining, decisiveness is magnetic, and it commands respect. You'll also find that when you start saying no more often, your yes becomes more valuable. If you agree to everything, your yes doesn't mean much because it's expected. But when you only say yes to the things that truly align with your values, your skills, and your priorities, people know that your yes is intentional. They appreciate it more because it wasn't given out of obligation, but out of genuine desire or belief in what's being asked. Ultimately, the word no is about ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your energy, ownership of your decisions. You don't need to rent that ownership out for the sake of keeping everyone happy. It's your life, and every yes or no you give is shaping the quality of it. Learning to say no without apology is not about being unkind. It's about being honest enough to live in alignment with your values and strong enough to protect what matters most. Respect is not something you can beg for or demand with empty words. It's something you earn by the way you carry yourself, by the boundaries you set, and by the consistency with which you uphold them. Strength is the foundation of respect. People respect those who show they cannot be manipulated, intimidated, or walked over. They respect those who stand firm even when it's easier to bend. And while you may think that being agreeable, polite, and endlessly accommodating will make others value you, the opposite is usually true. The world respects strength far more than it respects compliance. Strength is not about being loud or aggressive. It's about having a quiet, unshakable sense of self. It's the calm confidence of knowing that you won't compromise your values just to keep the peace. It's walking into a room without the need to shrink, apologize for existing, or seek validation. When you have that kind of strength, people notice, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because strength radiates without effort. One of the reasons strength commands respect is that it creates certainty. People know what to expect from you. They know you won't say yes when you mean no. They know you won't back down when something matters to you. That predictability builds trust. Even people who disagree with you will respect you if they know you're consistent and true to your word. On the other hand, those who constantly change their stance to avoid conflict are often dismissed as unreliable. Strength also communicates self-respect. When you respect yourself, others learn to do the same. If you allow people to speak to you disrespectfully, to ignore your boundaries, to take from you without giving in return, you teach them that it's acceptable. But when you draw a line and hold it, even if it makes things uncomfortable, you send the message that your dignity is not up for debate. That message alone will filter the people in your life, separating those who value you from those who only value what they can take from you. It's worth noting that strength is not about winning every argument or dominating every interaction. In fact, some of the strongest people are those who choose not to engage in petty conflicts, not because they're afraid, but because they know their energy is too valuable to waste. They know when to fight and when to walk away. That discernment is a hallmark of true strength. It's not about proving you're powerful. It's about knowing you don't need to prove it at all. Respect earned through strength lasts longer than respect earned through charm or performance. Charisma might win people over temporarily, but it fades when circumstances change or when someone else comes along who's more entertaining. Strength, on the other hand, is steady. People remember those who stand firm under pressure. They admire the ones who don't break when tested. They trust those who show resilience in the face of adversity. The road to building that kind of strength often begins with small acts of courage. Saying no when you would normally say yes. Speaking up when something doesn't sit right with you. Refusing to laugh along when someone makes a disrespectful joke at your expense. Every one of those moments sends a signal, both to yourself and to others, that you are not someone to be taken lightly, and over time, those moments add up, shaping the way people treat you. Strength also changes the dynamic in how people approach you. Those who are looking for someone to exploit tend to avoid people who are clear, confident, and unshakable. They prefer easy targets, people who doubt themselves, who hesitate, who can be swayed with flattery or pressure. When you embody strength, you become a harder target, not because you're unkind, but because you make it clear that you will not be easily controlled. One of the most empowering shifts that comes from living with strength is realizing you no longer need to be liked by everyone. The people who truly matter will respect you for your courage, even if they don't agree with every decision you make. The ones who leave or criticize you for standing your ground were never invested in you as a person. They were invested in your compliance. Losing them isn't a loss. It's a gain in self-respect and freedom. It's also important to understand that strength is a skill you can develop. It's not something you either have or don't have. It grows through practice. Through making hard choices, through enforcing boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable, through facing situations that challenge your confidence and refusing to back down. Every time you choose strength over comfort, you reinforce the message that you can count on yourself. And when you can count on yourself, others begin to count on you too. Strength has a way of inspiring others as well. When people see you stand up for yourself, it gives them permission to do the same. It shows them that it's possible to live without bending to everyone's demands, that it's possible to say no without your world falling apart, that it's possible to be respected without compromising who you are. In this way, your strength not only protects you, it empowers others. At the end of the day, respect is not built on how polite you are, how accommodating you can be, or how much you do for others. It's built on the way you carry yourself, the boundaries you maintain, and the strength you show in the moments that test you. People may forget your words or your gestures, but they will never forget the feeling they had when they realized you were not someone they could push past. Strength is the anchor that keeps you steady, and it's the reason the respect you earn will be real, lasting, and unshakable. Politeness can be a beautiful thing when it's rooted in respect, mutual understanding, and genuine care. But when politeness becomes a mask you wear to hide your boundaries, to avoid conflict, or to keep people comfortable at your own expense, it stops serving you and starts harming you. The truth is, politeness won't protect you from manipulation, disrespect, or harm. Only strength will. Strength in your words, in your decisions, in your presence. Strength in your willingness to stand up for yourself even when your voice shakes. Strength in your ability to say no without apology. You have to decide how you want to be remembered. As someone who was always agreeable, easy to persuade, and endlessly accommodating, or as someone who is consistent, principled, and impossible to walk over. One may make you liked by more people in the short term, but the other will earn you lasting respect in the long run, and respect is the real currency in life. It determines how people treat you, how they speak to you, and how they value your time and energy. There will be times when standing in your strength will cost you relationships, opportunities, or approval. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're clearing space for the right things and the right people. Anyone who requires you to shrink yourself, silence your voice, or bend your values to stay in their good graces is not someone who belongs in your inner circle. Losing them is not a loss. It's a gain in freedom and self-respect. This doesn't mean you have to walk through life with your guard up all the time or respond to every challenge with confrontation. Strength is not aggression. It's not about seeking conflict or proving a point. It's about carrying yourself in a way that tells the world you know your worth and you won't compromise it. It's about being calm, clear, and firm in the moments that matter most. Strength isn't the absence of kindness. It's the framework that makes kindness sustainable because it ensures you never give so much that you lose yourself. The more you live with strength, the more natural it becomes. At first, saying no might feel uncomfortable. Speaking up might make your heart race. Holding a boundary might make you feel guilty. But with each decision you make in alignment with your values, you'll build the muscle of self-respect. And that muscle will change the way you move through the world. You'll find yourself walking into rooms differently, speaking differently, and attracting people who value you for who you are, not for what you can give them. Life will always test you. People will push boundaries intentionally or not. Opportunities will arise that require you to choose between comfort and conviction. In those moments, remember, politeness may keep you liked, but strength will keep you safe, respected, and free. When you live from a place of strength, you don't just protect yourself. You set the tone for how the world interacts with you. And that is far more powerful than any approval politeness could ever buy.